Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning in to Wednesday Night Reviews. I'm your host, Konrad, and joining me on the right side of your screen today is Jerome Cabanatan, and he is a local author who's written a book called The Tree Kids of Troop 44, a original graphic novel, and let's get into it. So, Jerome, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, thanks for having me, Konrad.
Awesome. Now, to get right into the book, as I understand it, because I've done some research on you, not only are you a writer and a graphic artist, you are also a master in Tae Kwon Do, correct?
Correct. It was actually Tae Kwon Do that got me to make the book. When I finished competing in 2011, I needed to make a life, right? I needed to make a life. So,
Yep.
Spending money to travel, to fight, and all that, I couldn't do that anymore. But so I started an after school program at Yeongcheon Taekwondo. It's right here,
Yes. Wonderful.
right? And I started an after school program there. And one of the things that we had to do was I had to market. I had to market the after school program. So I went online. I went online to go find some pictures of like cartoony things of Taekwondo, and I ended up finding a lot of pictures, but it was a lot of pictures that I've seen before in other in other schools and other clubs. They would just use it because it was basically like clip art, and
Okay.
I didn't want to get mixed up, right? I didn't want to get mixed up, so I was like, okay, I took a pen and I just started scratching some stuff out, and luckily enough, one of the parents that I taught. One of the parents was a graphic designer and had a tower, had like a Mac tower. And they said,
Oh, okay.
He was like, could you use this? I was like, I don't know. Let's try. So I tried, and I made a poster. I made a poster for it, and it was good. A couple kids, I got a couple kids at a time, and I would come in and they would look at the poster and they'd ask questions. They're like, oh, those are cool. What are their names? And the Youngster Taekwondo's at Vaughan and St. Clair downtown. So I was like,
Nice.
the boy is Vaughan and the girl is Claire, right? And they're like, and they laughed about it, and that was it. They talked about it, and then they started asking questions about it. I started making coloring sheets with them, like coloring sheets of like
Yeah.
the techniques that I would ask them to do anyway. But with an after school program, you can't ask the kid to like train right away. They got to eat and they got to relax. They got to decompress before the class starts. So I just tried to do that to kind of fill in that time, so it just soaks into their head. And
Hmm.
stories came out of that because they started asking like, then who teaches them? Why don't they have noses? And, it was an exercise in improv, in like yes and just kind of like committing to it. And I made a bunch of lessons. And then I put a story around it, and they were existing. They were Vaughn. As soon as I said Vaughn and Claire, it wasn't anything I could edit. It was like, oh, they're alive now. That's their names. I'm going with it, and I went with it. And I started off as like little tiny quarter page singles that I would
Hmm.
get printed at the printing shop on Vaughan Road, like 2 doors down from the Taekwondo school, called
Awesome.
St. Clair Printing. So if you're ever in the area, Chris is great. But yeah, so I would make those. I'd make those, and about 6 issues in, right? 6 issues in, which I didn't realize that I could get. And I was like, he said we can bind them, and I said we can bind them, and I was like, oh, okay. So he bound them, and then I made a second one, and then now, so I sold those at cons for quite a while, and then
Wow.
so I think 2014 was when I started. I'd sell them at cons, I'd sell them at Taekwondo tournaments. Every year we'd have a Taekwondo tournament, so people were like a lot of people in the Taekwondo community in Ontario, like the kids would be like, oh, that's Master C's book, and then they go and get it there. So I got a lot of uh, I got a lot of eyes at the Taekwondo tournaments, but then
Perfect.
now they're put together. Almost those two books, like they're right here. These are
Yeah.
like the two small ones. But then I put together this one. Now it's available on Amazon, so we could kind of call this like the omnibus, right? But
Yeah.
it started from the Taekwondo school, and always grateful. And that's kind of all the messages that I want to put in there. So things that, to the kids that I don't teach or the kids that don't want to do it, but there's things in martial arts that I think are good for anybody, and that's why you see it in a lot of media. It's right. You throw a ninja in there, it makes it double cool, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
So yes, I absolutely agree with you when it comes to anyone being able to take something out of martial arts. So I myself actually trained in Tae Kwon Do up to my first Dan or black belt with Zhang's family Tae Kwon Do down in Niagara.
Okay, yes.
A long time in my teens. And as I understand it, so the master Zhang there, who still is today the master there, he was a Canadian Olympic coach there. If I'm not mistaken, when I did the research on you, I've noticed that you fought. You were in Korea. You were in, I believe, Japan. You went into a number of cities around the world.
Well,
Spain.
Yes. Luckily, through being part of the national team, I was able to. I got to step foot on every continent, except for Africa and Antarctica, right?
Well, okay, we can only really count one of those.
It'd have been nice. It'd have been nice to go to Africa. I have no real interest going to Antarctica, no. But it was fun to be able to step in and see the world and see the different people around the world, and make friends and acquaintances and find that even if you don't have anything in common with somebody, like you can't speak the same language, we were able to communicate. We were able to communicate passion, enjoyment, fun, friendship through Taekwondo, and people of all different races, creeds, colors, genders. It didn't matter. Right? It didn't matter, and that's why I go into the book. It's about they're tree kids, right? Nobody gives them any credit because they're just a tree, right? But I wanted to make. I didn't want to just hit everybody over the head with the equality stuff, but it's you need it because it's the truth, right? It's the truth. I've come across people, kids, adults, from all different types of lifestyles, and I've learned something from all of them. I've learned something from all of them. So I really would like everybody to be able to see that in the other people. Mm-hmm. Not to get preachy, but it's. I think that's how we become happy, right? That's how we become happy. I did a lot of teaching at Variety Village in Scarborough, Kingston Road, and Birchmount. Right?
Oh, okay.
Birchmount, right by Birchmount Collegiate. So it's, for those of you that don't know, Variety Village is a center it's a rec center for people of all abilities. So I was able to discover a lot about myself, dealing with people that had to live with things that were that I didn't have to live with, right? Mm-hmm. I had conversations and I made connections with a bunch of families there. I actually ended up meeting my wife there because she worked there. Because she worked there, and we worked there for years without even knowing each other, right? And it's nice to know that somebody kind of sees the same way. Somebody sees the same way, and it took years for us to even meet. I was downstairs, she was upstairs, but that's a whole other story. Okay, that might be another graphic novel 5 years down the line when I run out of stuff.
Well, there you go. Yeah, absolutely.